This is Chapter 1, Section 2. Evaluate formulas and solve a formula for a specified letter. Many applications of mathematics involve relationships among two or more quantities. An equation that represents such a relationship will use two or more letters and is known as a formula. So we've got some formulas here that the area is pi r squared. Well, what if we didn't want to know the area? We wanted to know the radius, right? And what if instead of the circumference, we needed to know what the diameter? Maybe they gave us the circumference and we're trying to figure out what the diameter is. So certain times it's good if we can isolate a different letter than is what is already solved. So that's what we're going to kind of talk about today. So the first example says, Oprah is 5'7" tall and she has a body mass index of approximately 23.5. What is her weight? Well, they've given us a formula down here. It says that the body mass index is I, so they've given us the formula for body mass index is 704.5 times W, and W would represent the weight, right? It says right here weight in pounds, and H is the height in inches. Now we've got to be careful about that because the information we've got is in feet and inches squared. Okay, so we need to, they're asking us what is her weight? Well, in order for me to find her weight, I'm going to have to isolate that W. Okay, so they've given me the other information, so I want to kind of rearrange my formula. Now, there's two ways to go about this. I could go ahead and plug in the information before I isolate my variable, but I'm going to go ahead and isolate my variable to show you how that can work. Okay, so our formula that we have is the body mass index is equal to 704.5 times W over H squared. Now, if I want to get rid of this H squared on the bottom, I'm dividing by H squared. So that means that in order for me to get it moved, because what we're trying to do is figure out, right? The whole goal is to figure out what her weight. So we want the weight by itself. So I need to get rid of H squared. In order for me to do that, I'm going to need to multiply by H squared so that this H squared will cancel out with this H squared, right? H squared over H squared is 1, just like 2 over 2 is 1. So, but if I multiply by H squared over here, guess what I'm going to have to do on this side? Multiply by H squared. Okay, so now I've got, and it doesn't really matter what order you write this, but H squared times I is equal to 704.5 times W. Well, I want W, right? The goal is to figure out what W is. I want W by itself, so how do I do that? Well, right now, I need to get rid of 704.5, and it's 704.5 times W. The opposite of times, the opposite of multiplication is division. So that's how we would get rid of it. And if we divide on this side, which is what we need to do so that those two will cancel out and turn into 1, I'm going to have to divide on this side. Okay, so I've got W by itself now. So my formula would be W, her weight, is going to be equal to her height in inches squared times her body mass index divided by 704.5. Okay, so I could find that. Now, really quick, let's do that, right? Let's figure out what her weight is. Well, we know that her height, okay, her height up here, it says she's 5 feet 7 inches. But this H right here says it's represented in inches, so we're going to need to make this whole thing in inches. So how many inches are in a foot? 12. So we would need to do 5 times 12, which is 60, plus 7. So this is going to be 67. Okay, so I need to do 67 squared. Okay, then I'm going to plug in a number for I. I like to, when I plug things in, I like to put it in parentheses because it ensures that I get the right answer. And so I is her body mass index, and they told us up here that her body mass index is 23.5. So I'm going to need to make this a little bit bigger. Sorry about that. So 23.5 all divided by 704.5. Okay, if you have a graphing calculator, you can do alpha y equals and just put it in exactly like this and you'll get the right answer. If you don't, you might need to calculate what the top is and then divide it by 704.5. So I'm just gonna calculate what the top is. So I'm gonna do 76 squared times 23.5. Okay, that is a very big number. 105,491.5, and then I'm going to need to divide that by 704.5. And like I said, if you've got the graphing calculator, you could do alpha y equals and then hit your fraction, and you could type this all in at once. It doesn't tell me what to round to, but I'm getting a decimal. It's 149.73. So it's 739. I'm just going to round to the hundredths place. And this would be in pounds. Okay. So, but you can see how adjusting this formula and isolating W helps us just find the weight. And then we could go back and plug it in. Okay. Now, we've just got some simple examples. They want us to solve for X here. And so they're wanting us to isolate X. Well, the only thing over here with X is B, and I'm adding B. So to get rid of adding, we would subtract B from both sides. So Y minus B is equal to X. We're done, right? We've got X by itself. X is equal to Y minus B. Okay. This one, they're wanting us to solve for W. So the area is 3/4 W minus 15. I don't really know if that stands for area because I don't know what the context of the problem is. So, but I'm trying to get W by itself. So the first thing I'm going to have to do is get rid of this 3/4 out here. Okay. And remember before, to get rid of a 3/4, we could multiply by the reciprocal. So multiply by the reciprocal, which is we're just taking the fraction and flipping it over, because that's going to make that be 12 over 12, which cancels out and turns into 1. So we can, and if I multiply by 4/3 on that side, well, then I'm going to have to multiply by 4/3 on this side. Okay. So I've got 4/3 times A is equal to W minus 15. Now I can take the parentheses off because there's not that number in front anymore. How do you get rid of a minus 15? Well, you do the opposite, because we were trying to get W by itself. We want to add 15. We add 15 to this side. We also need to add 15 to this side. So we've got 4/3 A plus 15 is equal to W. And a lot of times people like to look at it with the letter or the variable they're trying to find in the front. Okay. Would it have been okay if I wrote the 15 plus 4/3 A? I mean, these two things are the exact same. This is positive here, and it stays positive here. This 15 is positive, it stays positive, so that's good. Okay. This is just kind of some steps that you could follow if you were having trouble with this. Okay, so here's another example. They want us to solve for m. So we've got y plus m x squared equals mx. Now, if I want to solve for m, one thing I need to do is I need to have the m's on the same side of the equal sign. Okay, so I'm gonna move this one over here, because if I don't, I won't have anything left. Like if I move this over here, there would be nothing here. So I'm going to try to keep it where I'm not making things equal to 0. This is a plus mx squared, and this is a subscript, right? This is not a squared. This is a x2, x sub 1, x sub 2. So it's just a way to identify which x they're talking about. Okay, so if it's adding, to get rid of it, and to move it, we're going to need to subtract it. Okay, so this side, those things are going to cancel out and turn into 0. So I would have y equals m times x1, x sub 1, minus m times x sub 2. Okay, now what I could do is I can pull this slope m out front. I can, what we call that is factoring it out. Okay, since I've got an m in this term and an m in this term, I'm going to pull it out front, and then that would leave me with an x sub 1. So if I multiplied using the distributive property, m times x sub 1, that would give me this, right? Minus x sub 2, if I pull the m out of this term, m times negative, or m times a minus x sub 2 would give me a negative mx sub 2. Okay, so because if you use the distributive property and multiply these back out, you should get this. Okay, now I'm getting closer. I want m by itself. So I need to get rid of this stuff in parentheses. Well, it's m times all this stuff. And so what's the opposite of multiplication? Well, you're going to want to divide. But if you divide by this on this side, also going to have to do it over here. Okay, this turns into 1, and we've got our answer. Okay, we solved that for m. Okay, so that's it for 1.2. If you need extra help, make sure that you're watching the videos before the lesson, and feel free to ask me any questions.